Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast, is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. What's up, kids? Welcome back to Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. We have reached episode number 7, so we are just over the halfway point of season 2. Yes, we continue to churn them right along. We're just popping them out, man. That's what we do here. All right. We just hit our reviews, hit our analysis. We throw it out there for the masses, let you guys consume, and hopefully you're enjoying it. Tom Clark here, as always, joined by Joe Higgens and Jay Luft. And man, this is a fun episode. And I feel like it's kind of a cheap tactic to say that every time, because really every episode's fun. Even the episodes that are tough to watch are fun. There's something funny that happens. So that's my go-to line. It's become my go-to line. This is a fun episode. But it really, truly is. And I can't wait to get into it. So, guys, as we get cranking here on this, let's remind all the good people out there about one website, boinkstudios.com. Look at the ticker at the bottom, kids, boinkstudios.com. That is my production company's website. You'll find links to all the podcasts that I do. And you'll also find the links to the podcast that these two gentlemen on the screen before you do as well. So it's your one-stop shop for not only podcast links, but social media. I put up special announcements on there and links to live main event shows and live whatever it is we're going to do in the future. We're already talking about things we might do after the Two Nations pod is over. Spoiler alert, we won't spoil anything too much. We're right now in the midst of perhaps choosing the next series. So we'll see how it goes. But more on that to come. In the meantime, guys, Season 2, Episode 7. Joe, let's kick it off with you. We're over the halfway point of Season 2. Thoughts going into this episode?
This is the one, isn't it, where everything sort of starts to happen. Ted starts to realize that, like, he can't do this on his own. We see Nathan unraveling. Ooh. We see, like, Roy and Keeley, like, the cracks begin to show a little bit. And we also get some Rebecca secret admirer allusions as well, which is nice. And also we get like other characters doing their little bits and pieces in there as well. We get a bit of Colin building and stuff. And it's rewatching it, I would say it's not one of my favorite episodes because like there's jokes in there and stuff, but it's not. It's quite like a sad episode in a lot of ways of the things that happen. But it's still Ted, isn't it? And you've got to have peaks and troughs. It can't be ups constantly. You've got to have those downs as well. It's
got its fun moments, but you're right, Joe. There's especially the Nate stuff. And I've really been dreading this, Jay. I've been dreading the Nate transformation. And kids, we've been holding on. There have been moments when one of us will say something. I'll go back and edit the audio after the fact because in case you're watching it with us. But if you don't know by now, folks, that something's changing with this character, you'll never know. So, Jay, I've really been dreading this rewatch, not because I love the show, but just seeing that character continue to decline. So what's your take on that and also going into this episode?
I think this is the first episode where you truly start to dislike Nate. I'd even say by the end of it, you start to like despise him a bit because he's just a fucking bully through this episode. And the thing is as well, like we'll touch on it when we get to certain parts. There's so many people trying to set him right, which I didn't pick up on the first time. Like, obviously there's an obvious one, but there's something quite early on in the episode, and it comes across at first as like it's something like, oh, maybe that's why he's a little bit like got his issues, but at the same time, it's like, hang on, no, that's actually really good advice. Like, don't get too like wrapped up in your own shit.
Yeah,
and as I say, like it's like he gets so many sort of opportunities to sort of right himself and realize, oh, I'm actually being a bit of a dickhead here. And by the end of the episode, the train's off the tracks.
Yeah, that's it. By the end of this, you're like, there's no coming back.
Yeah.
And right now I'm okay. But as we go, I'm preparing because I try to view this stuff, even though I love the show. I also come at it from a writer's perspective. So as we start to make progress toward what's happening with him, I will begin to start asking myself questions. Yeah, but is this out of character? So like, I'm not quite there yet. I'm okay right now because we've seen the de-evolution of this guy as we've gone on. So I'm okay at the moment, but ask me again in 8 or 9 where I'm at, and I may have a different opinion. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Now I'm okay. So, well, kids, I'm ready if you guys are. Let's jump into this. This is season 2, episode 7. Now that we have teased you folks long enough, here we go. This is entitled Headspace. Original air date for this episode, September 3rd. That's my son's birthday. Thank you very much. 2021. Directed by Matt Lipsey. Story by Phoebe Walsh. There is 12 episodes in season 2. When last we left the Ted Lasso gang, Ted and the AFC Richmond squad were finally putting it together and hitting their stride in the FA Cup tournament, despite Roy's unwillingness to coach Jamie. Higgins found himself in an odd position as he wanted to help Beard in his relationship with Jane, as Rebecca's mom visited after deciding to leave Rebecca's dad. In the end, it was Nate who stepped up to save the day when Ted's infamous panic attack struck again. So that's where we came, and this is where we are. We open on Roy in bed. The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown is on the nightstand. I'm sure there's some reasons here. Is there a deeper connection besides just how much he gets into this book, or no?
I think it's just because it was one of those books that everyone read, and people who like, not to be like, but people who don't normally read books thought, oh, this is a brilliant and really smart book. And if you read it, it's not. It's a terribly written book. It's
also, as you say, it's a book that quite a lot of people have wrote, so it instantly makes it relatable when he's going, and stuff.
And
like,
it is a footballer's book. Yeah. Like, because like he even says in it, like he says the chapters are so short. Yeah, because it's poorly written. It's not plotted out properly. Like it's But I purely think it's just that, because I can't think of any like similarity between the plot of the Da Vinci Code and Roy at all.
No.
Yeah. You know what's happened, guys? We're so used to digging because usually there's stuff to dig for, but sometimes maybe there's nothing to dig. It's just a book. Maybe.
I think it's Beard's books are the ones we need to look out for. And this is just like a throwaway joke because it's.
I didn't see what Beard was reading in this.
I couldn't see it. I was like, I freeze framed it and was like, but yeah.
There's only one scene where he's reading, isn't there?
Yeah, I got it. We'll get there.
You got it.
So, the book is on the nightstand. I Got You, Babe by Sonny and Cher is playing. Roy rolls over to find Keely on her phone. He wishes her good morning. This is not the first time it happens. Wishes her good morning. Then he surprises her in the kitchen, tells her, hey. Then again in the car, they walk into the clubhouse together. He kisses her goodbye. And when he sees she's not going to her office and instead she's going to the cafeteria, he asks if he can come. And to her credit, she's bubbly and says sure. And she's very Keely. But when she turns away from him, you can tell she's, oh God, this guy. So, yes, like as you said, Joe, cracks are beginning to show.
Yeah, it was the I Got You, Babe thing. I was like, this is Groundhog Day, isn't it? This is the same thing day after day, and this is why. I like the fact that's just become shorthand as well now. Like, I Got You, Babe is just shorthand for this is the same. This is day in, day out. I was like, it's good. But yeah, she's like,
because it leads into another scene, doesn't it, as well? And it's kind of like it does a good way, as you say, with like the shorthand for Groundhog Day. It does a good way of illustrating that, like, this is very much the status quo for how it's been for however amount of time. Yeah. Which we find out, to be fair, hasn't been a long amount of time at all. But
no, and like I get it. Roy's found someone that he genuinely likes him back, has helped him, they've helped each other, and he just wants to spend all his time with her. But
also as well, like he's probably got like underlying like abandonment issues from getting sent up to like the other end of the country when he was a child. That's probably why he's so clingy, because he's like, he doesn't want to be like sent off on his own again.
Well, we assume he's never had this level of relationship before with anyone. It's always been people that have stole his watch. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this is the
you
first.
Tell us time with his phone, Joe.
Yeah, but this is like the first adult relationship he's had with someone.
Maybe the first time ever that he's had a full-time adult committed relationship, and maybe her too. Like full-time committed adult relationship, not a fling, not an affair, not a series of one-night stands.
She was with Jamie for X amount of time, wasn't she?
I think they established, don't they, though, like quite early in the season, like when she has that conversation with Rebecca, like she has very much like a type, and that's like footballers who are younger and like more dense than her. Yeah. That she can kind of like not control the relationship, but she can kind of be like the brains of the relationship. Whereas she's got Roy, who's like a similar maturity to her.
Yeah. And
who largely they're very alike and they want similar things. But sometimes it's one of those things where you're like so alike someone that you start having that kind of like sticking point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's opposites attract, but in this case, not.
And plus the name of the song is I Got You, Babe. In other words, I got you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're not going anywhere. I got you. So if you dig deeper,
very
it's
sinister way of looking at it.
Yeah. Right. It's a little bit more intense. Like you got me. Oh, I can't move. I can't. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. Ooh. So we see Nate. He's on his way to his parents. He's very much into his phone, reading his own press. Take note of that, kids. It never ends. His parents, played by Peter Landy and Neelam Bakshi, and his dad's reading the morning paper. Do people still read the morning paper at their kitchen table? Anybody?
It's one of those things. Like a lot of it's genuinely like an older people thing. I think where like they'll either go to like the corner shop to get the papers, or sometimes people do get them delivered. But it's definitely like an older generation thing. A lot of people now just do it on the phones as opposed to getting an actual school.
On public transport, there is a free newspaper you get on the bus, which is I believe owned by the Daily Mail. So don't read it because it's trash. It's trash anyway, but don't read it because it's right wing trash.
Yeah,
even better. Even better. What's cute here is that Nate's going to sit down, Jay, and he finds a box in his chair, and it's a throwback.
I just think that this whole scene's great because Nate's dad's one of those characters who when you first see him, you think, oh, he's a bit of a dickhead. But the more kind of like, the more you realize what he's actually like, he becomes quite endearing. I think this is the first time where I thought, he's just great. He's just no nonsense, isn't he?
He's just one of them dads.
Yeah. But as well, like he obviously, Nate's someone who hasn't got a lot of praise, and now he's getting a ton of praise. And his dad, in this kind of like sort of no nonsense backhanded way, is trying to like ground him and make sure it doesn't go to his head and he doesn't become a bad person. Because he also saw the thing in the restaurant, didn't see the spitting on the mirror, but he saw the attitude change, and he was like, well, why are you trying to do that to impress me? I just want to have dinner with my family.
Well, it was the don't whistle, I'm not a dog, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was like, yeah.
And he can see like the change, but he's not very good at verbalizing it.
And again, it could be that thing of if it's anything like my dad, it's like you have to make your own mistakes. I can't tell you not to do it. You've got to learn your own way.
Yeah.
But yeah, his dad in this is just like, because he's like, oh, look at that on the back, and he gives it a cursory glance and then goes back to what he was doing. It's So just when he picks that box up as well, he goes, oh, that's a good one. Puts it to one side.
Yeah, his mom is very sweet and loving and hugs him. His dad does not acknowledge him. I don't think he ever takes his eyes off his paper until Nate sees his own picture on the back of his paper. He says, oh, they'll let anyone in the newspapers nowadays, won't they? Hoping his dad will go, oh, good win, son. He's never going to get that from his dad. Ever. You know what I mean? So instead he gets, and this will cheer you up, kids. This will motivate you. They say humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking about yourself less. And in parentheses, my note is asshole. Sorry. I mean, I know what Nate becomes, but his dad doesn't know that yet, you know?
I disagree. I think his dad's seen signs of it with like the
really
restaurant.
okay,
Yeah.
With the whistle and the bit more cocky and a bit more self-confident. And his dad's obviously realized that Nate's like kind of been very sheepish all his life, and all of a sudden he's got this like massive positive reinforcement. And I think it's more his dad trying to give him advice, just not going the best way about it.
I mean, for me, I think I'm still at the point where I'm still connected to this guy, and like I'm just again, man, I'm very much dreading what's coming. So, you know, maybe that's the part of me that thinks that he's up on him. He's, you know what I mean? Give him some positive reinforcement.
If his dad did that, if my dad did that, it'd freak me out.
That's fair.
I'd be like, why? Are you dying? What's wrong?
Yeah. Are you sick? Yeah.
Yeah. It's that thing though. 'Cause it's like, that's like dads show love in different ways. Like, you know, he's proud of him. Like, he's not ashamed of him. He doesn't hide him away.
Right.
But it is just that thing of him coming in with the flowers, acting like, you know, Charlie Big Potato. And he's just like, just remember who you are.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's basically trying to say is like, don't believe the hype. You're still Nate.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, don't get too wrapped up in it all, because you'll only start like negatively affecting relationships with people. And
as soon as you start believing your own nonsense, that's when it.
Yeah. I think that's I wrote down that's actually the best advice he gets all episode, because it's straight to the point. It's not the best delivered, because at the end of the day, like, as far as Nate's concerned, it's just his dad being a dick to him, because that's just his dad. But from maybe it's because this is like the second time I've watched through it, and I'm picking up on it more because I know what's coming. But it's a bit more like, well, actually, his dad telling him that is exactly what he needed to hear, because everyone else is, like we'll see later in the episode, is still kind of not babying him, but, you know, still sort of mollycoddling him a little bit.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to when we get to it. But I think that his dad's almost more direct, but not direct approach is what Nate probably needed then. But obviously a lot more direct than what his dad was doing.
It all goes back to what Keely told him however many episodes ago when she said, you don't want to be famous.
No.
Like, for me, it all goes back to that, because she knows and she sees. And for all we know, at some point, she allowed things to change her as well. Like, maybe the Keely we saw in season 1 was the Keely who had gotten past that and was okay now. You know what I mean? But maybe it changed her too at some point. And she knows from experience you don't want to be famous, because not only is it hard to live with, but it's hard to live with up here, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Could be.
Well, she says, doesn't she, that like people just see her as one thing and one thing only, and like she's got so much more to offer, which she shows by taking the PR job in the club.
True. Yeah. Smart cookie. So Ted walks into Dr. Sharon's office and thanks her for helping him out. Kids, we know at the end of the previous episode that that Dr. Sharon found Ted in her office and he was asking for help for the first time ever. So that was big. And he says he doesn't know. He says, look, he said, I think I'm all better. I'm fine. I don't know if this appointment's even necessary. She ignores him, doesn't even acknowledge what he says, and lets him in. And the next few moments are physical comedy from this guy from Sudeikis is off the charts, where he's fidgeting and he can't be still and he's doing this. And, you know, he hits the couch and I'm going to lay down, and he tries this, and then he puts the pillow under his legs for back support. And it seems like it goes on for a half hour. This whole bit is so good, man. But he's obviously uncomfortable. He's talky. He can't get situated. He's nervous. And so when he's laying on the couch, like, how does this look? Is it okay? Is it too caskety? Which really cracked me up.
It's when he's on his side. It's like summer camp and we're in bunk beds telling each other stories.
That's right.
It's like, but Dr. Sharon's just stood there the entire time.
He's just letting him get all the nerves out.
Well, get all his Tedness out of him and like tire himself out like a toddler. Like, and then she's like, maybe just sit down. And he's like, oh, okay, then fair enough. Like, after he's done his bits, right, we can have an adult conversation now. Because otherwise he'd have kept fidgeting. He still does all the way through this meeting anyway. But it's just letting Ted get it out of his system so that he can be helped. But yeah, it is very, very, and it does go on. But
yeah. It reminds me of that scene in Knocked Up when he's got all the chairs in the hotel room.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's moving chairs.
Oh, that's a great scene. So, he finally sits down directly across from her and says, quite intimate in here, close quarters. It's like we're on the episode of The Sopranos without all the gratuitous violence, which is the good thing, but a lot less spaghetti and clams too, which is a bad thing. And he's 1,000 miles an hour, can't stop talking. And then he sees the drinking bird on her desk, which I'm sure is a huge metaphor for something else, or at least I'd suppose it is. And he has to comment. He has to comment on the drinking bird. Then he sees the tissues on her desk and asks about that. You got tissues over there? And she says, yes, tissues. What are those for? Sometimes it gets a bit emotional in here. He goes, uh-huh. And she goes, well, not always, but sometimes. He goes, yep. So he's still chomping at the bit. She goes, sometimes people just sneeze, which is good.
It's like he's trying to deflect it all back to her, and because she's done this dance 1,000 times, she knows, I'm just going to let him get it out of his system. And then it could take this one moment here, it could take a few sessions, but she knows it's all about patience and just letting him kind of get it out of his system.
Yeah, he's got to tire himself out. And when he's got nothing left in the room to point at, that's when we can start drilling down to the bedrock of what's going on here.
But also as well, he does say the whole, I'm not a quitter. I can't remember if it's this one or the next one. And he's like, I've never quit anything in my life, so that's why I'm back to kind of do this.
See, I had a thing with this, because with this and the second time he comes back, I'm like, it feels like he's going through very quickly, like the 7 stages of grief sort of thing. Because with this, he's like ignoring it and trying to make jokes about it, and in the second one, he comes across as very angry and denial about the whole thing. We don't
know the entire passage of time. We just know it's all within that week since the game that Nate took over.
I would assume it's a couple of days, because he's still. Yeah, I'd assume
it's like 3 or 4 days, for sure. But it's definitely one of those things that it could have been like, unless we were told otherwise, which we were. Like, it could have been days, it could have been weeks, it could have been months. But I think because obviously the nature of it all and how kind of like full throttle it is, and also Ted being Ted, he probably knows I'm going to see her, so I need to just kind of like get this out of my system and just start like realizing she's here to help me.
And plus, I think he references that. Doesn't he say like, I apologize for the other day or the other night? Yeah. Which could mean a week. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I would say, based on the fact that Nate's still in the news and he's on like the back page of the newspaper, I would say it's days.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they haven't played a game since then, apparently.
No.
Right. That would make sense. That makes sense. So he goes back to the drinking bird on her desk, and he's looking at that thing, and he's, again, very antsy. And she is fantastic when Sarah Niles, I think, right, as Dr. Sharon. She leans in, and she goes, Ted, it's going to be okay. And it's like, what a great line. Like, it's great. You know what I mean? Because it immediately calms him down. And she says, don't worry, is what she says. And he goes back to the bird, waits for it to stop. And he says, okay, what do you want to talk about? Which is, let's get this thing teed up, right? She says, why don't you tell me what happened the other night? There we go. The other night. He says, yeah, I don't want to do this. And then leaves and just goes, which is awesome. Now, the second visit back is going to be a much different Ted, kids. Woo. That's something to watch. On the pitch, the guys are running drills. Ted is out there and he says, all right, fellas, look, there are 2 things you can't ever let the other team know. All right. The first one's your home address. Mark my words. You'll start having food deliveries and SWAT teams showing up 24/7, which is nuts Because in my day, all we had to worry about was crank phone calls. Then with the advent of caller ID, that joy got 86 from the prank menu, which is a darn shame because the Jerky Boys were a national treasure. Y'all should give them a Google sometime.
Oh, mate, that was like, I've not thought of the Jerky Boys in years. Yeah.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. We had the comedy CDs. We were passing them around, me and some friends of mine. Yeah. Funniest thing I'd ever heard. Yeah.
For children for young people who aren't aware, the Jerky Boys literally used to do prank phone calls and would put them on records and CDs, and it was one of those things you'd sort of listen to with your mates. And there was like a Chicago gangster one I always remembered as being very, very funny. But it's been a long while. I might have a dig around, see if I can find them. Because
seems like there was an old man, like a grandpa or something, and there was.
It was all very stereotypical.
It
stuff.
Was. Yeah.
I was gonna say, wasn't the one where it was someone who was doing Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions?
Possibly, yeah. It was all very, very like generically. Oh, here's an angry Scottish man. It was all stuff like that. But it was the first sort of thing that they did. It was funny. I remember it being. It probably isn't. If you go back and listen to it now, it's probably trash. But
I was gonna say it may not have aged well. Yeah, I have that sometimes. Yeah, I'm very much an '80s kid, so I'll go back and be really, really excited to watch an 80s animation or something I haven't seen in years. I'm like, yes. And I go watch it. I'm like, no. Ooh, like this didn't hold up. You know what I mean? Yeah, so yeah.
It's nightmare all over again from the other week.
It is. Yeah. So Ted basically is telling him, I don't want to see y'all walking around with your tired faces because they're worn out. They're wiped out. They're all gassed. They're breathing hard. And he says, just huffing and puffing around the pitch. No, thank you. Only face I want to see from y'all is what, coach? And Beard says, game face, baby. Because Beard always has to deliver that, And Ted says, darn tootin', Vladimir Putin, which sounds a lot like don't fret, Boba Fett from episode 1. So
he does it loads, like it's anything that rhymes, isn't it? But it's always fun.
It's always fun. Ted splits the team up in offense and defense. The guys left with Nate and Beard begin to tease Nate about his big win. Danny does it first, then Jamie, then Colin. And I'm sorry, this may be one of the first moments where I'm like, all right, Nate, relax. I didn't get any sort of, we're going to stick it to him at all. This was friendly ribbing. I didn't think there was anything, you know what I mean?
So I think it's because Colin and Isaac used to bully Nate like the worst, that Nate's kind of like now thinks, well, I'm better than you. And it's like what he says to Colin later in the episode, which is one of the worst scenes in the entire show. I think it's horrifying. Yeah. But you can tell Colin's like just having like a little bit of a laugh and a joke, and Nate's just like, well, I had to sit you down, didn't I? Because you weren't playing well. Mm-hmm. And then it's when he tells him to sit out, and Beard, you can see Beard's just watching and being Beard about it.
He does that Beard face, yeah.
And then he just like he basically tells Colin not to bother training.
All the goal scorers go over there. Colin, you can take this one out, yeah.
Yeah.
Colin
I never thought it was vindictive ribbing. It's like it's the stuff they've done all the way through it in the locker room and stuff. It's just there's no malice behind it. They're just and they're happy for him. Like he's got what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although they do keep referring to him as the Wonder Kid, and isn't it here where he says it's Wonder Kid? I did say that.
Yeah, but Jan Mas does say, well, you didn't actually. You got it wrong later in the episode.
Can always count on Jan Mas to bring the truth.
Correct people.
Jan Mas is brilliant in this episode at times.
He always so good.
He's only in like fleeting moments, but whenever he's in it, he's fantastic.
It's gold. It's gold every time. Do you love films that have the same plot over and over and over and over again with only slightly different looking people in the main roles, but just don't have time to watch them all? You do? Then simply listen to Hallmark of Greatness, the only podcast that takes you through such masterpieces as Love at Sea, Love at Christmas, and A Volcano Sacrifice for Love. See a pattern here? Available wherever you get podcasts from, and also find us on social media by looking for Hallmark of Greatness. What's great is that Colin, as this happens, is shaken, but I am a strong and capable man. I'm a strong and capable. He says it to Beard, and he's like, That's my mantra. And Beard only responds with, cool.
Cool.
That was it. Because Beard is an enigma. He's a mystery wrapped in enigma inside of a riddle. So
Beard at that time, I think he's still figuring out like what's going on, like properly going on with Nate
Steele. Yeah.
And like it's one of those things where you can tell he's kind of like, right, I'm keeping an eye on this situation right now because this could get real bad real quick and disrupt the harmony of the team, because one unhappy player can lead, as we've seen with Jamie in the previous season, one unhappy player leads to a team of unhappy players.
Mm.
And it's interesting the way Beard's like he doesn't he just kind of leaves them to it at the moment, doesn't he? He doesn't interject, and maybe he should have. Well, I think he's just trying to get in his head. He thinks it's just banter between the two of them at this point. I think
it's that thing of he's taking it all in, but there's no point cussing out Nate in front of everyone, because then Nate's just gonna like lash out again, like for being. Yeah. It's store it up, have a quiet word.
To be fair, he does give Nate the opportunity to fix it before he gets involved.
Yeah, it is that thing. But also with the Wonder Kid, Wonderkind thing, it's Nate trying to rewrite his own errors.
He's trying to gaslight the error out of existence, isn't he?
And again, this is the start of like, because old Nate wouldn't have done that. Like, but it's him going, no, I didn't do that at all. It's like, we did. We've all seen like the press conference.
It's the whole thing, though, isn't it? Where like they got his name wrong, and he went, "No, it's Nate Shelley."
Yeah,
like when they were like saying, "No, make sure people get your name right," and it's like that's like the thing that's kind of stuck with him. But even in that scene, you obviously don't see Nate have the full transformation, but you do see when everyone's sort of laughing, joking, he's trying to, and then Colin says something, you see something change in his face, and he just deadpans it.
Yeah, he's continuing to allow all these things to build up. And to your point, Jay, about Beard talking to him, Beard shouldn't dress him down in front of the guys. That's not how a coach should do his, right? And plus, it's basically what Nate just did to Colin. So, like, it wouldn't set an example at all. Like, right now, Beard and Ted are the ultimate examples of how to be a proper coach, how to be a professional, how to do the right thing. And Nate is, for as much as he looks up to these two guys, is not as confident in himself and is like feeling his way around in the dark, because this is really his first shot at it. Plus, he's got all these insecurities happening anyway. It's a bad recipe. I mean, it's, disaster is coming, kids. I'm telling you. So back in the locker room, Sam checks his phone and he's looking for Boss Girl, who we found out at the end of the last episode is the boss, actual boss, Rebecca. So there you go. And Rebecca has not answered after he suggested they should meet. Zorro looks over his shoulder and they have this discussion. It's been 2 days. Sam thinks he's messed up. Sometimes he sees 3 dots. And you know that we all have been there unless you have an Android phone. You know what I mean? So the 3 dots is if someone's typing and then nothing. Danny says, maybe there's a good reason she hasn't responded. And Isaac says, maybe she got hit by a bus, which is great. Danny says, maybe by a train. You can see Jan Moss. If you look at that scene, you can see Jan behind them. And you're like, I'll bet Jan is going to say something, right? And he freaking does. He says, it's more likely she lost interest in the relationship. I'm like, geez, man.
Well, again, it's that classic thing of the team just riffing off each other, a bus, a train, and then Jan Mass just goes, "Nah, this is probably what it is." Actually, like cool, logical.
Yeah,
Jamie, this is terrible texting.
When Jamie's just like, Ratatouille is your favorite film.
Oh, it's great. It's like how lame your texts are. That's the problem. Sam says, "Well, I don't care," and then suddenly the 3 dots show up, and all the guys are like, "Oh." Like that, and the dots disappear, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, because, like, he says, like, Jamie gives him his phone back as the 3 dots show up, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. Colin says, that's a kick in the plums, which is a good line. We go to Rebecca's office next. Rebecca's there with Keely and Higgins. Keely says, oh my God, just answer him. It's been 2 days. Rebecca says, I don't know what to say. Higgins says, how about the truth? I'd love to meet up, but I'm worried that you can't live up to the fantasy I've created in my head. So I'm going to let my insecurities keep me from possibly finding my one true love. Higgins dropping the truth bomb this time.
Higgins is like, do it or don't do it. Shit, I get off the pot in it at this point. Like,
But you notice Rebecca completely ignores him and just goes right back to Keely. Doesn't even acknowledge what he said.
It's because it's true. And she doesn't want the truth, does she? She wants people to like she does mollycoddle her a bit with it.
She does say about like not everyone's relationship can be like on a Christmas card or something like that, doesn't she?
It's true.
Some kind of horrific card.
She tells Keely, she says, his favorite film is Ratatouille. That's worrying, right? So once again, we get a joke played out here, but it's also played out over here at the same time. This show's very good at those little moments of joining things together in different locations. Yeah, that's fun. And she says, meet him. And she says, I love Ratatouille. And ironically, it's about snobbery and how good art can come from anywhere. So stop your dithering and go fuck your cartoon rat, which is a great freaking line. I don't know what's making that, but you know. Rebecca says, I mean, everything always goes wrong. Our relationships are a nightmare. Higgins, of course, my relationship is the oxygen that gives me life. Rebecca says, apart from Leslie's marriage, was a bloody greeting card of some kind. And you and Roy are just aggravatingly perfect in every way. And Keely's like bubbly, and then she kind of holds the stare for a second too long.
Yeah.
And her and Rebecca are tight. So.
Yeah. It's like, oh, trouble in paradise. And yeah.
Exactly. The bloom is off the rose, apparently. So Keely admits that it's harder since they started working together. They're around each other all the time. Wherever I go, he's my shadow, my adorable hairy shadow. As she's saying this, Roy is walking in. And Higgins is going, da, 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 and then
he looks and he does big eyes at Rebecca, and then they just start scatting, and Roy comes in and goes, why are you jazz singing? And then, but he's astute because he goes, yeah, were you talking about me?
And Rebecca and Higgins say no, and Keely goes, yes, just is honest and
goes, fair enough.
Yeah.
I love that running joke.
Also, the running joke of Roy being hairy through this episode as well.
Yeah. You notice that when he left, when the Keely and Roy left the room, that Higgins and Rebecca went back to the jazz scatting.
Yeah.
That's such a Ted thing to do. The moment's passed, but I'm going to go back to the joke. Like,
even Roy knows they weren't practicing some, close vocal harmonies, but it's just, we'll maintain the illusion anyway for the sake of it.
They're all doing bits. Like Joe, I think you said this a couple episodes ago, Joe, that they're all doing bits now. Everyone does bits. Roy does bits now.
Ted's infected them all with bititis.
Yeah. We go back to Keely's house, and he's trying to hug up to her at the table as she's trying to work, and you can tell things are starting to... And Keely says, look, if you're going to be here, you need to go sit quietly on the couch and read your book.
Like
so he growls. Child. Yeah. Go sit over there in the corner. So he growls as he typically does. He moves away to read his book, and he's just sitting there. And she's looking at him. She goes, that's not helping me either. He says, what? I'm doing exactly what you said. I'm sitting here quietly reading my book. You're doing exactly what I tell you. It's so fucking hot. And then they start making out, which is good. Women don't tend to say that stuff to me. Not in my time. I don't know. Tom, do what I tell you to do, and man, is that a turn on. Usually it's Tom, do what I tell you to do, and shut up about it. But it's all right.
It's probably because though, like, she's as we like kind of established, she's so used to having like kind of emotionally immature like men in her life, like Jamie, that when she's got Roy, who's just like loyal to a fault to the point where it's getting on her nerves, and she's like, that's amazing, that's exactly what I asked him to do, and he's done it without putting up a fight or trying to like just not listen to me. At the end of the day, he's listened to what she's had to say.
I know, but he sits down and he starts reading, doesn't he? And then he's looking at her, and when she's not looking, then she looks at him, and it's just like, no one's getting any work done there, are they? Like,
no.
You imagine Jamie probably just would have left if it had been Jamie and Keely. He just
would have
said, "Well,
his PlayStation, wouldn't he?" Yeah.
Yeah, something. Yeah, he wouldn't have. Yeah,
tough.
Yeah. So we're back to Sharon's office. This is good. Ted walks in unannounced, and he tells her, "I don't like to quit things." Back to what we said earlier. She asks, "How are you?" And he says, "Fine." He talks about the couples therapy that he and his wife did, and which we know from several episodes back, that's what's turned him against this. Actually, we know from season 1 with Two Aces episode. Yeah, very early on. So he talks about the couples therapy, and she says, "How did it work out?" And he says, "Well, I'm in London. My wife is back in Kansas, and if she heard me call her that, she'd be hopping mad." So, guys, he still has not let go of. He quit wearing the wedding band, but he's still not there yet. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there was was it the episode before where he said his mum.
Yeah, he caught himself saying it.
Yeah. To the school when they called. He's a lot more standoffish in this one, but it's not like when you normally can tell something's up with Ted and his hair's all over the place. He's almost like calculated. The way he I
think this is like the anger and denial part of his his grief
Big
stages.
Yeah, because it's one of the only times Ted swears again throughout the show.
Yes. Yeah.
But also it's probably the only time where Ted's an actual dick.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Like he's not nice to Dr. Sharon here. And you can see as well, like, it catches her off guard to the point where she looks genuinely upset by it.
Yeah. Well, it's Ted, isn't it? Ted's always, an annoying, rainbow, isn't he?
He's disarmingly positive. So when he's not that, and he's
like even when he was led Tasso,
it
was still done with
still
very
entertaining,
much a wink in his eye and his tongue in cheek.
Whereas this is very
Ted.
Like
Ted at his rawest.
Cynical Ted. I don't think this is going to work. I think it's a load of bullshit.
Ooh, God, when he says that, dude, you're like, oh my God. It's jarring. You know what I mean?
Isn't he? He says, how long do these sessions last? And she goes, 50 minutes. He goes, but you charge by the hour.
Yeah, that was...
Where are we going with this?
That's where I was like, oh, fucking hell, Ted, what's going on here?
You've never been like this before.
Like, again, though, obviously, like, we understand eventually why there is that resentment there when you find out about, obviously, the doctor who was treating him and his wife. But
yeah,
there's that kind of resentment he harbors towards people who do that, like therapists, or rather I should say. But at the same time, I think it's the only time where we ever see Ted lashing out at somebody where it's not like, where it's completely unnecessary. Like even on the Liverpool episode with Nate, like Ted's literally like, he's had a fit to drink, he's just signed his divorce papers, Nate's doing that annoying thing with the letter.
Yeah.
And Ted's like, just, what are you doing? Like,
yeah. I mean, he has a go at Jamie as well with the practice thing as well. But again, that's
completely
the greater good. Yeah.
And it's completely justified because Jamie's just like being like
a knob,
being an abrasive little shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, I think it's more Ted understands she's trying to kind of out Ted him in a way by getting him to open up to her. And he's put up that defense to the point where he's like the anti-Ted almost.
Ooh, the anti-Ted. Jay, I'm with you to a point that he goes too far. He does go too far, okay? But she also did tell him to be honest. And she said, basically, this is a safe place. And, and then he does, but like, he goes too far. And like, he goes through the whole spiel about, she says, why are you not a fan of this work? And he says, I think it's bullshit. You don't know me. We don't have history.
It's the thing she says of, I just want the truth. And he says, she goes, I'm only interested in the truth. And it's the we don't have history. You don't know me. You don't know the gory details of my life. What is it? The fights, the mistakes, my deep, dark secrets. But you're not listening because you care about me. You're listening because you're paid to be here.
Mm.
And what you're gonna do? You're gonna blame it on my family. You're gonna blame it on my upbringing. You're only interested in truth, but you charge $50. You charge an hour's worth for 50 minutes of work. It's bullshit, and stomps off and I'm like, fucking hell, Ted.
And slams the door. Didn't close it. I mean, off the hinges slams it. Listen, thinking back when you first watched it, did you expect him to come right back in and apologize? Because I did.
I honestly did, because there is a long pause. And he has stomped off
there
before,
for a few moments, doesn't it?
And then come back in and apologized for I'm sorry for slamming the door, sort of thing.
That's the show. That's the show, right, Jay? That's the show saying, let's make him think he's going to come back.
I was going to say though, in a way, it's more impactful when he comes back the following day.
Yes,
because it's you know for a fact that Ted's been thinking about that, and he's slept on it, and he's gone, yeah, that was the wrong way to do it. And again, he's said himself he's not a quitter, so now he's got all that out his system. He's got the kind of almost the facade of all the nervous energy and Ted being Ted, and then he's got all that negativity he has towards it. Then the third time he comes back, he's just an open book.
That's it. And Dr. Sharon's a professional. She probably knows this is the procedure. This is what a lot of people with carrying this amount of guilt and trauma around with them do. You've just got to ride it out. But to hear that coming from Ted, she does look genuinely, taken aback by it, because we've never seen this version of Ted.
And what's fun is, it's again, guys, we've said since episode 1, all they do is plant seeds, and we're starting to see seeds, blossom through this show, because the next scene we have is Rebecca accidentally, she bumps into Sam in the hallway. We should also say, before the bumping into Sam happens, she's on her phone on Bantr. Nate is once again reading his own press. He cannot stay off of social media. He's just absorbing it. He's smiling. He's so into it. But that's when Rebecca bumps into Sam. They both apologize to each other, and Sam goes, these machines, we're so connected, yet we've never been further apart. And then she smiles, and everything's real quiet. And he goes, is that you were going to say that? And she goes, yes. And then they awkwardly say goodbye. To me, this is a seed planted of, they're cute, and we know they don't know yet that they're, but you see where I'm going with this? Is that a seed planted of, they're going to be fun, but do they really have enough to, do you know what I mean?
If we were believing in the rom comedy of it, that would be sort of their meet cute, wouldn't it? That would be their part of it. I mean, Sam has been into the office before for the sponsorship thing, hasn't he? And he was very kind of in awe of Rebecca, and they're still kind of nervous around her, but she's weirdly nervous around him as well.
He came in for the to invite her for the burning of stuff as well, didn't he?
He did as well, actually. Yes,
that was the first time you see them on camera together.
True.
So they have got a little bit of history, but this is kind of weirdly awkward for the two of them. So if we were doing the rom comedy aspect of it, this would be their meet cute sort of thing.
And they're both highly attractive people with beautiful smiles that light up a room, which helps, because when they're on screen together, you're like, wow, you don't know if it's love, but there's a spark, because they're so magnetic with the way they look at each other, which you assume is they're just professional. Sam is a genuinely good person to his core. This kid's probably never hurt anything or anybody in his entire life. So it's to see them at play with each other. It's fun, but as we'll learn later, we'll get there. So I don't want to spoil anything. Will walks into Nate's office to announce, and he's very playful, your new pens have arrived. And he's got them, and Nate never turns around, barely acknowledges him. He's like, I'll just put them here.
Will's the most innocent person in this episode as well.
I know, but it's like kicking a puppy, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's what makes it all the worse. Like, in fact, he doesn't acknowledge him. He's so engrossed in his Twitter feed about how great he is, and all these articles praising him, and he's just like, it's like what feeds the monster.
Yeah. It's like as well, like he just kind of goes, oh, okay, and just walks out, and then he has like that really nice little exchange with Colin, where like they nearly walk into each other, and Colin's like, oh yeah, it's because I'm wearing camouflage.
Yeah, that's good.
That was good.
And then that was good. Colin's like so genuine to Nate in this scene.
Yes.
So it's like, we were just having a laugh. Are we okay?
Yeah.
And again, you see Nate's face change, and it's like he's annoyed that he's had to stop looking at all the people like blowing smoke up his ass.
It's that thing, doesn't it? He does like a big Bond chair reveal to him.
Yeah. Like, well done. Yeah.
Get off yourself, mate. Like, you're still in the the annex office. You're still in like the rubbish office with Higgins' stuff on the floor.
This is the thing as well. Like, one of the articles I noticed says, should Nate be managing his own team? And it's like, it's like literally he's done one game. Like the press take things out of hand, but they never get that out of hand with it.
Again, it was one play, and it could have gone entirely the opposite way.
Absolutely.
Plus, Jay, the press doesn't know about the locker room speech that fired up the team. They don't know about little things that Nate's done to contribute, but Nate knows everything positive he's done, so all that snowballed as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said like earlier in the series where it's like Nate was starting to show glimmers of it, where he was kind of riding Will a little bit. And it was just like, all right, yeah, like this, it's like he's getting a bit of a superiority complex, but again, Beard's noticing it, but it's not anything he's needed to address yet. And I think this is like finally the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back with Beard.
I go back to the lavender episode when he's upset because Will washed the clothes in lavender, and Ted sits down and he says, "Why do my clothes smell like flowers?" And then Nate scoots his chair all the way back and comes up and says, where do you hear this shit? Like he's all intense and mad. See, when it's like that, it's funny and I'm okay with it. But yeah.
But it is like a kind of like a warning sign, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing though. It's funny then, but if you look at it all together, the pieces are slotting in. Like, like I said, Beard has seen all of this, and is he's like, oh, maybe it'll right itself. Maybe the ship will correct. But Colin says but it's like Danny and Jamie took the piss out of you, and you didn't say anything to them. And Nathan goes, well, let me explain. They're like Picasso and Gargan, and Colin goes, pedophiles. I was like, oh, bless you, you dumb, handsome man.
Right, yeah.
I love Colin. He's such a good character.
He says they're artists. And here you talk about this is what people do on social media because, number one, they don't have the stones to do it in real life because they'd get choked out. Number two, they want to make themselves feel better because they're probably live a miserable existence. So this is what people do on social media every day. They're doing it right now. Go check. They're doing it right now. They're burning each other to the ground. But in this case, he does it to his face. He says, they're artists. And Colin, you paint too, but your work doesn't end up in museums. It hangs at, you're like a painting at a Holiday Inn. You don't inspire. You don't move people. You're there. You cover a blood stain. You do the job. So just do the job, all right? And he turns his chair back around. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man.
Cold, though. It's proper.
Yeah.
Mr. Burns evil.
Oh my God,
there's no need for that. He could just say, I was annoyed at you. Like, I don't think you're that good a player.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be like, also, you're just a rubbish person. It's and this was like that. And the fact that he just turns around and doesn't acknowledge him leaving, he's just, and now I'm done with you. You may go.
Colin looks like he's been gut punched when Nate says that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because he thought they were like, he picked on him and stuff, but we've patched that up and we're all mates together now.
Like he does like seem at this point in the show as well like one of like the least threatening characters out of everybody. Like he seems like genuinely like one of the nicer like members of the team.
Yeah,
good call.
He's a strong, capable man.
Yeah.
He is not a piece of shit. Yeah.
Maybe don't repeat that last bit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But then it does that good long pan as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Beard's
Yep. Beard's just sitting there watching him. Beard is reading About a Boy by Nick Hornby. That's the book he's reading.
Right.
There
It's
you
topical.
go. Right. So great moment. Remember I complained last episode, should Beard have pulled him aside? Tom forgot because this is only my second watch through of the entire series. So there you go.
Yeah. I was going to say, even with the way Beard does it in this episode, like, it's like the one warning, but then there's something later on where Ted's like, oh, should I get involved? And Beard's like, no, you don't need to. I was like, maybe he should have said, oh, just keep an eye on this.
Again, as we've seen from the start, though, Nate and Beard have Beard has a genuine fondness for Nate and thinks that, if I say it to him, that'll be enough.
I think Beard wants Nate to make his mistakes and learn from them, as opposed to telling him you're making mistakes and you need to stop.
Yeah,
because it's
the same as his dad.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, like if Nate gets it like kind of written out for him, he's going to be less receptive to it probably than just
like all men.
And plus, that's part of Beard's job. Part of Beard's job is to field, issues with players, I would think. And, does everything need to go to Ted? Probably not. There's things that impact the game, of course. Injuries, of course. Play, of course. But maybe in Beard's mind. But you know what? God, dude, having said that, Beard has seen so much when everyone else kind of just glosses over it. Beard's never missed anything. Does Beard's character actually believe I'll talk to him this one time, we'll be done? Apparently so, maybe.
Yeah.
Because this is a pattern of stuff being done here, guys.
I suppose in this episode, when Beard actually confronts Nate does react on it.
Big time.
Like he follows through with he realizes what Beard's kind of said, and he realizes the error of his ways. But at the same time, it's maybe you should just tell Ted to just keep an eye on that, because Ted's blissfully unaware about the whole thing.
Also, because Beard's defense as well. He knows Ted had a panic attack. He probably knows he's seeing Dr. Sharon. Doesn't want to heap more problems on his plate.
Yeah,
thinking I can deal with this. We don't need to concern Ted with it. It's under control.
Yeah,
I've had a word. Solved.
Excellent call. Yeah. So Ted's walking down the hall and realizes the blinds are drawn in the kit room, and you notice that he just kind of randomly does a double take, and he's out of curiosity. He walks in, and Keely's smoking like a freight train, and he says, "I thought you gave it up," and she says, "I did. This is only to cover the smell of the boots," and that works to an extent till Rebecca and Higgins walk in, and Rebecca's like, "Oh, this is what we use to cover, to excuse the smoking," and she's like trying to get her to stop, talking. Did you notice
the room
that
where smoking doesn't count or something? Yeah.
Right, yeah. Did you notice how very discreetly Higgins took his pipe out?
But it's that thing of as well, Keely's thing. It's a chicken and egg. You wouldn't be in the boot room unless you were smoking to cover the smell of the boot room. It doesn't make any sense.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I love the fact as well as the scene goes on. You don't necessarily notice Higgins has the pipe until he goes to say something and he can't understand him because he's got a pipe in his mouth.
I don't even know if we saw him light it. It's just so quick.
No, I think it's just for I mean, holding a pipe feels great. You feel like good for pointing and being information with.
It definitely feels like it's more for dramatic effect.
Yeah,
than it is
I don't think it's lit. I think it's just, we're going to the smoking room. I'll get my pipe. Like, I'll get my jazz pipe.
I want to fit in. I want to be like, well, we're all doing this activity together. I'll fit in. I've got a pipe with me. Yeah. Hey, kids, Tom Clark here, and did you know the very podcast you're listening to right now is available on BoinkStudios.com. B-O-I-N-K, Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, BoinkStudios.com. So Keely's complaining about Roy, and she's staying away from Roy, kids. He's presently in her office reading the Da Vinci Code and talking about the Knights Templar. Sometimes she needs a moment to herself. And then Will comes in, adding to the party. And he's like, I came to the boot room to get some boots. And that's when I noticed the pipe for the first time, was when that line happened. Rebecca says a very interesting line here. She says, Keely, stop auditioning your complaints. I don't think I've ever heard that said before. That's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, we've all done it where you're talking to a friend. So let me tell you what she said. And say it to her. You know what I mean? Like, I love that line. Stop auditioning your complaints. We haven't said it 1,000 times before here, kids. The writing on this show is perfection. I'm just saying. The dialogue is effing fantastic. Just tell the person who can actually do something about it. Ted says, well, I don't know, boss. Sometimes it's good to ball things up. That's how we get, pickles. Keely says, and vodka. Will goes, extra virgin olive oil. And Higgins says, and messages.
Reaching for boots.
Yes.
Reaching for boots over Rebecca's head and stuff while it's going on. Like,
yeah.
He's still doing his job, but he's like, I'm involved in something for the first time ever.
I love the way when he goes to grab the boots and Rebecca looks at him like, what are you doing?
Doing my job.
He's just there to do his job.
You're in my way, boss. Let me work.
He's being a pain.
Let me work. Higgins says a line about messages, and Ted goes, what? Higgins is like, in bottles. And they're like, oh, yeah. Again, it's like moments that the team has when somebody will say something ridiculous, but it somehow resonates.
And then 5 seconds later, Danny will go, and this as well.
Yeah.
We've moved on from that, Danny, but thanks.
Yes. Not a moment too late at all. Jamie comes in and says, and he's not looking up at them. He's just looking at his shirt.
This made me laugh so much.
It's so good.
Can we take my name off the back of the shirt and put it on bigger?
Yeah. Put it on.
Such an absolute himbo of a man. He's brilliant.
Put it back on, but bigger. And we hate to break it to you, kids, but we've looked up Mr. Dunster. Phil Dunster does not speak this way, and it's ruined my illusion.
Yeah.
Because I was really hoping. Because basically everything that ends in ER, Jamie lets it float up to the clouds when he pronounces it. So it's not bigger, it's bigger. Bigger? Yeah.
Bigger.
Oh, yeah, it ruined me. I let my wife hear it, and she's like, oh, that's what he said. And she's disgusted. And I'm like, see, it ruins it for me.
Never meet your heroes. Yep.
Never meet your heroes, kids. Hear that? 100%. Jamie comes in, and he says that, and it's freaking great. He looks around, and he says, what the fuck? Which is great. Will says, they're talking about Roy. And Jamie mutters, grumpy old twat. And Ted says, I agree with the grumpy part, but the other 2 words I take umbrage with. Keely gets defensive of her man, gentlemen. She says, Roy's none of those things. He's perfect. And I should know because I spend every minute of every second of every hour of every day with him, which is completely backwards, right? Roy walks in and they all stop, dead stop together. You talking about me? And they all in unison say, yes. Jamie says, definitely. Right?
I love that.
It's so good. And Roy just goes, all right, you ready to go? And like, he's fine. He doesn't care at all. Doesn't care at all. And you know what? Knowing what's coming between these two, this is also And this is probably why it stings him so much when he finds out the truth. Him being okay with this is not just because I'm Roy Kent and I don't care what people say. I'm above that. I don't care. Screw them. But it's also, I trust her. Right? And so when he finds out she's been talking about him and it's negative, the trust is like, right? Yeah, because he's had no reason to believe she would ever do anything to harm him at all.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they leave and Will finds a cigarette butts in a boot. I caught that. It was very quick.
Tips them out.
So,
loads of them in there.
Yeah. So we go back to Keely's place. Keely's watching Sex in the City, and Roy's sitting on the floor in front of her. He sits right down in front of her to read his book. And he's all into this book, dude. It's so good. He's like, no way. And he's reading it. Can't put it down because the chapters are so short, right?
It's such a...
Like he goes...
Yeah.
Well, it's like she's like, I want to watch my show. You read your book. He's like, okay. And then he sits right in front of her like a cat would do. It's like, just, I need to be part of your attention. I need to be part of your focus.
Yes.
Anyway, like it's an incredibly sort of childish thing to do. But yeah, him reading that book. This guy, he's got like a spiked thing around. It's just like, stop it, Roy.
God, she loses her mind, doesn't she? She goes nuts on him.
It is
and
one
when
of those
she goes,
things though, like where all the stuff on TV is literally what's happening in that room, and it's what she wants to say, but
yes,
it's very well juxtaposed together.
Very good, yeah. Because she stands up on the couch, and when she does this, he goes, "Whoa!" Like he's never seen this before, right? And she tells him, "I need some time where you're not reading or turning me on or just fucking being here all the time." And she's screaming like a banshee. And the back and forth between these two is epic because he's like, "You don't want me to turn you on?" And she goes, "No, yes, I do. I mean, sometimes, just not all the time. Sometimes I need to be by myself." And that's when it hits him. "Is this what you've been talking to everyone about?" She goes, "Yeah, but you don't care." "I didn't when I thought it was the usual stuff like gossip or how much hair I leave in the drain." She goes, "It is a lot of fucking hair." And he says, "You've been making out to everyone like I'm following you around like a needy, clingy fucking fridge magnet. I'm an idiot." When Roy Kent says, "Fuck this," really loud, Juno Temple, she's a treasure. You can see her visibly jump. He's never raised his voice to her ever. Like, whew. And when she starts crying, angels in heaven cry, I'm telling you, because it'll break your heart.
Those great bits of acting in this is her reaction to it, because then he stomps off and she's just like, fuck.
Yeah.
Because that's not how, I'm assuming that's not how she intended to deal with this, if she ever intended to deal with it. But it has, like, and it's, you can draw the parallels between this and Ted's ongoing thing that led him to where he is now, of letting stuff build up inside you is never a good idea, because it will come out when you least expect it, or when you least want it to.
And also, guys, we talked about this earlier about how this is probably the first true adult committed full-time relationship with another adult that these two have ever really had, ever. So, like, maybe she didn't come to him because she doesn't really know how, and they're still feeling this out, and yeah.
But also, like, I think it's one of those things that Roy just wants to be around it, but he's like, I think if she were to say to him, "I just want a little bit of time to myself," he's that aloof that he probably wouldn't care.
Yeah, like, I think it could have been dealt with better. Fine.
Yeah, like if she just said something to him, like, he probably would have been okay with it. Obviously, I do think there's like there is definitely something there where it's like when he got like sent up to Sunderland when he was a kid and he was away from his family and he was away from loved ones and he didn't get to see people that he wanted to as much as he wanted to. That's probably definitely played a part in him being as clingy as he is. But at the same time, Roy Kent, he's very, like, he seems more hurt about the fact that she told everyone but him than he does the fact that she just wants some time to herself.
It's absolutely true. Yeah.
It's also the fact that she didn't come and talk to him about it.
Yeah. It's a trust thing, isn't it? Like, he trusts her implicitly, and she couldn't trust him to not like go off the handle when she said she wants a bit of time to herself.
Which is understandable because it's Roy. But I also think like Roy is just infatuated with her. I think it was in the last episode when they stood in the corridor. He's very like protective and stood over her.
Yeah.
So I think he just adores her and wants to be around her, like you would, you know. But everyone needs their own bit of space every now and again to just do nothing, just be away from people. Yeah. And I think Roy's outrage at this is purely because we're supposed to be grown-ups, we're supposed to be in this relationship, and you went and told Rebecca, you went and told Ted, you went and told Jamie.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's got a sting. Right? But you couldn't tell me. Fuck! Like,
what's great is that as intense as we think this is, we've made it more intense the way we discuss it. Because there's so many, there's so many layers to it. Like the more, as a man, you can see this go, oh man, all you gotta do is just talk. Why are you just talk to me? Which is what all he's saying. Like, if you just come to me first.
Again, though, it's that they're so alike that they're both too stubborn to kind of address that.
And it's Roy.
Does
Roy have that emotional maturity to deal with it? When she slept with Jamie that last time, Roy had a big stomp off about that, did he? It's like,
that's fair.
He got that level, to deal with it.
That's fair.
It's 6-1 half a dozen of the other at this point with that. But this was not. I don't think this was Keeley's ideal way of revealing this information to him.
Well,
ruined the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, right. As heartbreaking as this scene is, this next scene is effing hilarious. Nate's walking down the hall with his AirPods in. This time, he's listening to his own press now. We've gone so far down the rabbit hole with your own ego. It's you're off the rails at this point, right? And it's crazy.
Like, to be listening to, I assume it's probably a football radio show. And it's just bollocks. Like,
it's like Roy said, isn't it? It's like we sit here and we talk about this and we don't know anything what's going on.
Yeah. It's literally people who aren't good enough to be managers talking about what managers should do. And it's like, well, why? What gives you any kind of like authority to say half this shit when
it's different from talking with your mates in the pub about stuff. But
it's like
on like syndicated radio, and it's dumb.
It's like we wouldn't like start a podcast talking about, I don't know, like molecular physics and say how someone's doing it wrong because none of us know enough about it to be able to do that.
Needs a bigger telescope, mate. Needs a bigger Bunsen burner. I don't know. I don't
needs more atoms. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. How many atoms are in that pocket? 7 atoms. Yes,
that's too many atoms.
It's it's fun to have opinions on things like sport and stuff like that, but just like pass it off as fact.
Yeah, which is what they do, and it's usually people who would just knobheads anyway.
It's the fact that Nate has moved on from reading to listening now. Like, he's exhausted all the written press. And now he's moved into audio mediums.
He just needs to. It's just him blowing smoke up his own ass, isn't it?
It is.
Feeding his own monstrous ego.
Believing his own hype. He goes into his office, the lights out, and it's great. It's great. It's visual comedy in this show. They're so good at it. Turns on the light, and Beard is just there, staring at him with the hat and the shirt and the coat and everything. And Nick Muhammad is effing great because he looked like he's about to jump out of his skin. I would like to think that was improvised, but I'm guessing it was. Wouldn't it be awesome if like he didn't know that Brendan Hunt was going to be in there and it was legit scared? Like, oh my God, because it looks so good. And Beard says, "You were rude to Colin. Not just rude. It was personal and weird." And for the first time in probably since season 1, we see Nate begin to break, and it's almost like. It's the thing of, you're possessed, the body of Christ compels you or whatever. And like for a moment, the old Nate came back. We saw him for that long. And he realized, you're right. And he flat out admits he's right. You're absolutely right. He says, did you tell Ted? Nope, this is just between you and me. Do better. Do better. Door's behind you. He's throwing Nate out of his own office, which is wonderful.
I love the way as well, like Nate turns around and Beard's Batman.
Yeah.
He goes,
hang on, this is my office. Turns around and he's just. The only way it would have been better is if that chair was spinning.
Yes.
But, like,
oh my God.
If you saw Beard just like sat reading his book back in the chair.
But did you not look? There's a very quick bit at the end where Nate looks up like he's on the ceiling.
Yes. Yeah, he looks up. Yeah.
Because he's Batman.
He's Batman. Oh, we just keep adding to the mystique of the Beard character. It's great. We haven't peeled that onion. It's coming, kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming soon. Get ready. We're almost there. Keely's in the car park, and Roy pulls up. She says hi. To his credit, he didn't ignore her. He did look at her and acknowledge her and nod. And I think he mouths what's up or hello or something, but doesn't speak to her. And when he walks in, she starts having a conversation for the both of them, which is cute. But, you know, she's very upset about what happened, obviously. And now she's put, we're going back into this again. She's put back into the corner of I'm on defense or whatever because I've hurt him. You didn't really hurt him like it. You know what I mean? Like, you both have a solid point, but it's going to be up to Roy to bring this thing full circle. And he does. Yeah. We'll get there. So we're back to Ted and Sharon again. And this time he knocks on her door. She doesn't even look up. She says, hello, Ted. She knows it's him. She says, I thought you'd be back. He goes, why is that? He said, you said you never quit. And then so he comes in. She says, can I be honest with you about something? He says, what? This is Ted doing Ted things. He says, what? I've got a boogie in my stash. And he does this. But he smiles because he knows he's just messing with her and having fun. Yeah. But this is the way he breaks the ice. We know that he uses humor to break the ice with everybody. And she tells him she was deeply offended by what he said just because the therapist is getting paid. They don't actually care. And again, Dr. Sharon hits him with some knowledge, and it's effing great. Says, would you coach for free? He goes, yeah, I would. She says, but do you? And he says, no. She says, you care about your players. Why would you assume it's not the same for me? And I'm like, oh, that's it. In the episode. That's perfect. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. She says, you know, I don't assume all coaches are macho dickheads. And he smiles and he says, that's a good point. Consider me dunked on. So he apologizes for what happened. And she tells him, hey, it's normal to be scared. It's, you know, fight or flight. The response kicked in. You managed to do both. It's impressive range. And Ted says, watch your back. Watch your back, Glenn Close. He's referenced Glenn Close before, I think, in this show, hasn't he?
Yeah, a lot, I think.
Yeah.
They talk about the truth. She tells him it will set you free, but it'll piss you off first. Another good line. Ted says, maybe your new nickname should be the truth. She responds with, I can't be your mentor without occasionally being your tormentor. He says, I like the sound. That's good. Yeah. And she goes, I knew you would. That's a Tedism, right? Yeah. She offers the tissues and he throws them all the way across the room. Very good.
This is good because she's let him get like his nerves and negativity towards it out the way with, but then she's kind of hitting back with almost like a Tedism to the point where now they both know they're on the same page.
Yeah. Yep. She's basically said, I am the same as you. Just because I get paid for this, you get paid for this. Yeah. We can tell that you care for these people. You're trying to help them. All the things you have done for them before I got here. So, you know, I can do that for you. And it's a very good scene. And like I said, that tormentor line at the end, like, yeah, he's in.
Yeah, he's in. Yeah. She got him. Ted's been getting people. Now she got Ted, which is that's the switch. So we're back on the pitch. Will is juggling water bottles as the team stretches, which is good. Little moments you get to see how awkward this kid is.
One of those little mad bits where he's just mucking about like a kid would.
And you know, if you had to, we know nothing about Will. I don't know that we learn a whole lot more about him other than superficial. details.
I did learn his surname. I think we have mentioned it, but I'd forgotten it until I looked him up on IMDb before, and he's called Will Kipman.
Will Kipman,
Yes.
Yeah, it's great.
It's just brilliant.
But like, you again, this is all superfluous, and this is just me ranting and throwing it out there. He's awkward and stuff, but he's well-rounded. You get the feeling this kid's had a positive upbringing with positive reinforcement. His dad hugged him and told him he loved him. He got what he needed, and he's just a really good kid. Nate could have been that kid. So maybe in some ways, Will is what Nate could have been had Nate had the right reinforcement.
Possibly,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a theory.
Yeah.
He's very similar to what Nate was like in season 1.
It's true.
But I think the difference is, like, he's come in, and you could say the way Nate is towards him is because he resents the fact that Nate kind of got like hazed when he came into the club, and Will's come in, and the team treat him like they were treating Nate after Roy had intervened.
Yeah,
great point.
And I think that's why Nate harbors so much resentment towards him, because he's come in to do the job that Nate was doing, and he's just kind of like walked in and everyone's been nice to him, whereas Nate had to kind of like not earn everyone's respect, but basically everyone had to be told stop picking on Nate because he's one of us, whereas Will's just been brought in, and because of that kind of community feel within the team, Will's just been embraced by the team.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's that
point.
horrible old people thing of, well, I had to do this, but I was young. Yeah, but do you not want the world to be better so people don't have to do that now?
Right.
It's like it's kind of like, I remember I used to work with someone who like literally they were like part of the furniture in this place, and whenever anyone got promoted ahead of them, they'd moan about it because they were like, well, I've been here longer than them. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter, does it?
No. If
like,
you don't apply yourself,
you've got to earn your stripes. You can't just think because I've been here longer than you, I deserve more, like, better treatment.
Not to like go massively off topic into another show, but do you remember when Michael leaves the office in The Office and they give the job to who? Creed, because he's been there the longest, right?
Yeah.
And Creed like is a maniac. Like, it's that sort of, just because you've been there a long time doesn't mean to say that
Creed is a maniac.
Yeah. But it's that thing. Just because you've been there a long time doesn't mean you're good at it. And like, I get like like Nate's sad because Will's not had to go through the hazing that he's had, but it's going to work a better place now. Yeah,
it's like Nate's trying to give him that hazing and give it to some of the other players as well, like Colin, and like take out a lot of that resentment on people who've made him resent it.
Yeah, it's a jerky thing to do.
Yeah,
it is totally.
Really, Nate should be the one going to see Dr. Sharon, and he doesn't, does he?
Yes, that's a point, actually.
Like she's there for the players and the coaches. Like that's why she gets set in.
Wow, great call, Jay. That's really good. So Ted and the guys come out on the pitch, and they give Nate the floor. Nate's going to apologize to Colin. He says, yesterday I was a bit of a, and before he can get it out, the team chimes in with asshole, prick, cock, and Danny says, wounded butterfly, which is really good. And Nate says, yes, okay, I was a cocky, prickish, wounded butterfly's asshole. And he offers his hand to Colin, and for a moment, Colin just looks at him and said he goes in for a hug, and the entire team jump in and hug this guy who has got, I mean, Nate's got rage in him. Like, it doesn't manifest itself as fighting or anything, but you can tell he's got, and all these guys are embracing him like he's one of their own, man.
Very much in this scene, though, he's humbled, isn't he?
He is.
And it shows like Colin's like one of the nicest guys in the team. Like, he's just a nice idiot.
Yeah.
Ted asks Beard, did I miss something? Beard just nods. And Ted says, is there anything I need to address? And Beard just shakes his head no. And they just leave it at that. It's so good.
Yeah.
So good. Ted says, like I always say, sometimes the best stew is the one you leave sitting on the stove overnight because you fell asleep watching Citizen Kane after too many beers. What?
Ben just gives him a look like, okay,
Yeah.
that's clearly come from somewhere.
I love how sometimes, even though these guys have been together forever, you feel like that even Beard will just randomly give him a, like he's not, I didn't quite get that. Yeah. Or I didn't quite, what exactly did that mean? Yeah, that's really good. So Ted addresses the guys and he says, all right, fellas, here's the plan today. Peas and carrots are going with Coach Roy. Rest of you beef chunks are coming with me. Let's go to work. And they walk off and the team's like, what? And Nate's like, what? And Beard goes, starters with Roy, reserves with Coach. And as they're separating, you can barely hear Jamie say, just say that then. Know what I mean? Which is awesome. So good. So they're running plays and Roy stops them. And this is probably the most aggressive Roy's been with Jamie in a while. But for the first time, Roy uses the whistle gimmick.
Whistle.
Oi! I said whistle.
Whistle. Why not just blow? Isaac's like, why not just blow a whistle? And he's like, because I've told you, impure metals give me a rash.
Oh my God.
The more weird stuff we find out about Roy, he's allergic to impure metals. He's into dogging in one episode. Do you remember? I could never be that free. Yeah. Like,
right.
These weird little caveats they put into his character.
He's in a yoga class with old ladies. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a very layered individual. He goes off on Jamie. It's aggressive too, or at least he is. Jamie, what the fuck were you doing? I mean, he's all spit and vinegar, right? And he says, Richard loses his man, gets in the box, and you run the other way? Jamie says, I was pulling my defender out of his path. Roy says, he's your teammate. He needs you to come to the ball and support him. You all got that? Respectfully, actually, it's respectfully, coach. That ain't what he needs from me. He needs me to give him space. And Roy goes, what did you say? Like he's,
and
but it's also,
all the team go. Oh,
yeah.
As soon as he does it.
Well, except for Yanmas, who like comes in and goes, he's right, Roy.
Yes. He's like, the best thing I could do in that situation is to give him space. And when Jan says he's right, Jamie goes, yeah, I know. I learned it from Pep, which is nice. And
then he says, he learned it from Cruyff, which is probably true.
Yeah. I don't get this reference. What's this reference?
So, Johan Cruyff, he was a Dutch footballer. He's the guy who invented total football, which we'll get to. So he was a Dutch footballer in the 70s.
I think, yeah.
And then he went on to become an equally great manager. He basically, his style of football pretty much inspired like the modern game today. Nice. A lot of the stuff like Man City play a lot of similar football to what he was playing in like the 90s as a manager. So yeah, that's what that is. So essentially, Pep Guardiola is an extremely good manager, probably one of the best managers in the world right now. But without Cruyff, he wouldn't have had that knowledge.
What's fun is that Jamie corrects Jan's pronunciation of the name, and then Jan goes, "Okay, Englishman." Yeah. Like, it's so good. Jan's a bit of a smartass at times. Like, not only honest, but also, all right, that kind of thing.
Do we not get more of the Cruyff stuff at some point?
Probably.
Maybe.
They'll mention it when they bring up Total Football, definitely.
Yeah, because again, it's Jan Mas going, Cruyff. And they're going, yeah.
We say Cruyff, and it's actually Cruyff, I believe.
Right, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's Cruijff.
Cruyyff.
Gotcha. Pronounce C. Yeah, gotcha. All right, gotcha.
But yeah, you don't pronounce the U.
Jamie says, look, whatever. The point is that Richard doesn't need me to crowd him. And since he's my teammate, I should trust him to do what's best, right? And Roy has an epiphany and connects the dots.
Yep.
And the only thing Roy can do to deal with anything is go, fuck! And he walks off mad.
Stomps off.
Jamie says, I didn't say nothing bad this time. It's great. That's the thing. Like, Jamie was completely right about everything.
Yep. Which probably hurts Roy as well, to be honest.
That's probably why Roy's more annoyed than anything, is that not only was Jamie right, but Jamie's the one who's pointed out like something else that he didn't know he was right about.
Yep.
For one of the first times we're starting to see emotional maturity from Jamie Tart.
Yep.
Holy Lord.
It's one of the first times we're getting like a proper bit of back and forth with Roy and Jamie where they don't feel like they're just going to kill each other.
Yeah. Jamie feels confident enough to stand up to him.
Right.
And say, well, no, you're wrong, actually. Yeah. This is the same Jamie as well, who earlier in the episode wanted his name bigger on the back of his shirt. Let's not, like, he is still a child, but we're getting there.
Very much. Very much. Yeah. Join the Untitled Wrestling Podcast for all the latest pro wrestling news from around the world. Want to dive deeper? Interviews, fantasy booking, roundtable discussions, quizzes, video game streaming, watch-alongs, and a lot more can all be found on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. You can also find the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Untitled Wrestling Podcast, and Twitter, Twitch, and Discord at Untitled Rest Pod. Follow, subscribe, and download today. So the next bit in the locker room, this is when the guys give Nate the jersey, and on the back it's Wonder Kid, 2 words. Mm-hmm. And I still don't think any of them see the harm in this.
No,
I don't even
like,
this isn't even teasing at this point for them.
That's that's your nickname now. But this is where Nate says it's Wonderkind. You must have misheard. He does it again. He doubles down on the gaslighting.
Well, I love at first when Isaac gives him it and he goes, "It would have been dead awkward if we still all thought you were being a prick."
Yeah.
And then when Nate says Wonderkind, Yammas goes, "Did you know?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I did say Wonderkind. He goes,
yeah.
It's when they say, "Oh yeah, it was Will's idea. He thought it'd be a cool thing to give you."
Like, Will being nice,
and
Will being a
Will
cool guy.
being lovely, and it's the look that Nate shoots him.
Yeah. Will says it's a pretty awesome nickname.
Yeah. Like, you've got to think up until this point, Will probably like really admires Nate. He definitely comes across that way as like, obviously Nate knows that Nate was used to do the job that he's doing. And again, like, it's the same thing of Nate loving the club. Will probably is a fan of the club, and to see Nate kind of step up from being in his position to then being a coach to then essentially being like a briefly a caretaker manager for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got to be inspiring for Will, and it's just shitty what happens next.
Yeah, it sets the stage. It's gut-wrenching at the end of this. But we go back to the pub. Ted is pounding a beer. We should note he's pounding this beer into submission. And May walks up. May says, "If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it." Ted says, "If that's your fancy way of asking if I want another one, you guessed right." May says, "Thought so." For the first time in a while, we see Trent Krim. He's on his way out, but he spots Ted, and he comes back and speaks to him. I love Trent Krim.
I love Trent. I forgot Trent was in this episode. I got so excited when you saw him. It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously Trent's like, he's a little bit drunk. He looks like he's been on a date, and because he's with someone, and they walk, and he's like 2 seconds, and then he goes over to say hello to Ted, and he's, as I say, comes across like he's a little bit tipsy, and then he puts his glasses on. He's like, "Right, on the record," and he asks Ted about the last game, and like obviously Ted having to go, and Ted's like, "Oh yeah, it's food poisoning," and May like clears the throat. He goes, "I didn't get it here,
not from here."
And I'm healthy and fit as a fiddle now. But the fact that Trent's like pushing it, it's as if he knows there's something more to it than what Ted's letting on.
I think you're right.
The fact that Ted's like so deflective of it, it's almost like he's emotionally spent from like the therapy session he's had in the day, and he just wants to not really think about what has happened and put it behind him.
And Ted is so honest, guys. Ted's honest with everybody. Ted doesn't work you. He doesn't lie. He doesn't. But Ted is smart enough to understand, if I tell the truth, this could hurt the club, and I can't do that. So it's actually a really good move. Yeah. Trent says, you had food poisoning, you're fit as a fiddle now. And Ted goes, exactamundo to Kimmy Matumbo. And Trent says, love our chats. That's how he ends it. Which is good.
I think there's obviously a little bit more to this scene than just like a throwaway bit.
Yes.
But at the time, it certainly feels like a throwaway bit. But obviously, it is setting up setting the scene for what kind of comes in season 3 with Trent, which is cool.
Yes.
It does. I picked up on that as well. Absolutely picked up on that. Yeah. Because it could have been construed as, well, it's just a friend. Nah, well, maybe not.
Trent's off the clock. He's not in journalist mode.
Exactly.
He goes over to say hello to Ted first as a friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of goes into journalist mode to try and get a scoop. And Ted's just like, all right, here we go. And I think Ted's cautious because he doesn't want to talk about that. But I think given like the previous stuff that Trent's written about him, Ted's a lot more kind of like forthcoming than he would have been with anybody else.
Yeah, they've got a good working relationship.
Got a good rapport, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, he got Trent so early in the show. He got him in season 1. And Trent Krim, who's a journalist, probably been a journalist for 30 years or 25, or whatever the number is. Like, seen everything, been lied to, has written about lies, has written about scandals, you know what I mean? Knows when he's getting worked. His defense is always up. He's got a bit of an edge to him. And here's this guy with no ulterior motive, no agenda. He's as real as they come. I think the human side of Trent immediately got attracted to that and said, "Oh, this is awesome." You know what I mean?
Like the thing is as well, if like Trent's been covering like as like a lot of sports journalists, they usually kind of get bundled into like that regional area, or with London, it'll be like a specific club or 2 specific clubs. And from his point of view, covering Richmond prior to Ted, he's probably got so cynical and jaded by the fact that it's the same old shit, just a club trying to stay in the league or yo-yoing up between like 2 leagues. No real like goals, no real kind of like excitement about it. And then Ted's come in like a breath of fresh air, and it's probably like made him like kind of fall back in love with what he's covering.
It's true.
In a way.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as they've got, I'll just say this before we move on, but they've got kind of a bromance to a certain degree, and you really see it in season 3. Like, it really manifests itself. I love it. I'm here for it. I'm a sucker for that stuff. This next bit we get, Keely is coming home. She sees a bag at the bottom of the stairs and assumes the worst. And I think we probably all did. Maybe. Of course, you see Roy have that epiphany on the pitch, so you don't know what he's doing. It could have been, I'm going to leave for a bit. I love you and I'm sorry. But he didn't do that. She goes upstairs. He's drawn her a bath. There's candles. There's rose petals. There's music. I mean, yeah.
Rose petals from her neighbour's garden, which I've shredded, he says.
Yeah.
Yes, ripped them to shreds.
Ripped them to shreds. That's
Phoebe's nightlight.
Phoebe's light.
I'll need that back though after.
I'm gonna have to give that back, or I'm gonna get it in the neck, which is a great line.
Yeah, and then like he just like puts her in the bath. He's like, you're not gonna see me for at least 3 hours.
He gave her a foot scrubber too, by the way. We can't forget that bit.
Because she's got gross feet.
I love that he says, you've got gross feet, just like I leave all that hair in. It was like there was a dead rat in there. he does this gesture in the most Roy way possible, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's nice. Like
it's very nice.
I love the way the playlist's called Roy's fucked up and not give Keely enough space or something like that.
Roy's sorry for not understanding Keely playlist, which is great. Yeah. Guys, it's great. And you suspect Roy's never done this in his life for a woman. Like, I'm sure he's got a soft side, we all see it, but has he spent any length of time with a woman to be able to have something that's this deep and this sincere? Like, we know he has it in him. He's doing it here, But like you suspect, as we've seen before, one night stands and quick relationships because he's a famous footballer and it's quick and we're done. I'll never see you again or whatever. And yeah, so he had it in him this whole time, kids. Who would have thunk it? She kisses him and thanks him.
The yoga mums, hasn't he?
That's right. Yeah. Oh, and they're bringing that side out in him too. Yeah.
Yeah, could be. Could have found
cultivating it. Yeah. This is the spot we've been dreading. This is. I think this might be worse than what he did to Colin. Colin's a grown man. Colin's probably seen and heard a lot worse than that. But like Nate is at his desk, reading his own press again. Have you kids picked up on a theme through the past hour and a half? And Will goes by whistling. You can hear him in the background, and that'll come back, right? Nate finds a post that reads, Nate might have won it for Richmond, but he clearly still seems like a loser. And just like when Rebecca got triggered in season 1 by things Rupert did, this triggers him. He goes to Will. And again, guys, the camera work in this show cannot be overstated. The camera doesn't follow him in. It stays on the door. And you only hear him say, if you ever do anything to humiliate me again, I'll make your life a fucking misery. Yeah. And he walks out and slams the door because of the shirt. Like, vicious.
Well, as well, so he sees the negative tweet and it kind of bait and switches you. So for a second you think, oh, maybe he's because he looks kind of distant from his phone and detached from it. He puts his phone down. He looks like contemplating it almost. And he picks his keys up, he picks his phone up, and he picks the shirt up. And you're like, oh, maybe he's just going home. And then he storms into the boot room and does that. And then it's the bit that follows where you just see Will looking really rattled. And he just closes the blinds, and then the episode ends. And it's like, holy shit, that was just completely uncalled for.
It's up there with Jamie's dad in terms of uncomfortable scenes to watch. But also, there's nobody else around.
Yeah. But that's the thing as well, isn't it? So with Colin, he got caught in the act of being a dick. I think this was worse because Will's literally harmless.
He's kicking a puppy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's never had any previous issues with Nate. And he did something that he thought was just a nice gesture. There was no malice in it at all.
Like he said, there's probably a fair bit of hero worship. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nate's done that to him, and he's just completely as I say, it's like a gut punch again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible ending.
It is, and I Feel Free by Cream is playing, which is my least favorite Cream song of all time. Maybe, I don't know why, maybe it's just so played out, and I'm just not a fan of the sound of it, but for me, that made this moment even worse, because I'm not a real big fan of that song, so I'm and then plus what he does is so despicable, you know what I mean? Oy! Man, the storytelling done in this show. Oof,
it's the work of a coward, though.
It is the work of a coward.
Punch down on someone when you know you're not going to get caught. Will ain't going to say nothing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So he knows he's got away with it scot-free, and he's not going to get consequences from it. And this only is going to feed into more and more horrible things.
And he's waited for Beard's not there, Ted's not there, the team aren't there. It's him and Will.
Yeah.
And it's just horrible.
And all because of something someone wrote on Twitter. I don't know if you've ever been on Twitter, but
it's a cesspool.
It's a cesspool.
Dumpster fire. Yeah,
anything that anyone says to heart, because he's for the past week been, like you said, blowing smoke up his own ass, believing his own hype, huffing his own farts, and for the first time he's getting mildly criticised by some rando on social media.
Well,
and this is what he does.
It's like with anyone who's in that situation, isn't it? Who gets a load of praise and then someone says a negative thing, and you see them have a meltdown on Twitter, and it's all right, one idiot said something stupid to you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even anything really bad, was it? It was it was a mildly negative thing. Said, I still think Nate's a bit of a loser. And it's because Nate doesn't want people looking at him like they used to look at him, that he's just erupted on the first person he's seen who he knows he can get away with doing it to.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done it to anyone else. He wouldn't have done it to Colin, because Colin would have stood his ground, I think, now. Because Colin, he's done it to the one person he knows he can get away with.
Well, I think Yeah, Colin obviously knows that Beard's probably seen it, intervened.
Also, Colin's a player, like he's protected to an extent. But yeah, it's a truly despicable act.
Still kind of Nate abusing his authority because he'd have a level of authority over the player as a coach.
Yeah, but like I said, when they gave him the shirt, it said it would have been difficult if you were still being an asshole. Like the whole team would have treated him differently. But he apologized, He accepted him back. Everyone makes mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but he knows that Will isn't going to do anything, and he's got away with it. It's a heinous act.
And I don't know if this is the case where you guys are in the world, but over here, players can absolutely get coaches kicked out. It happens all the time. All the time. And Nate's not even the head coach here. So if they wanted to be vindictive, 4 of them at one time could have went to Ted and said, we're not playing. Do what you want to do. Bench us, whatever. You know what I mean? And dude, it works. It works in this country all the time. So, but again, these guys are a family. They're not the same unit they were when Ted they weren't a unit at all. They were getting paid to play, so they played. Jamie was a cancer. Roy hated everybody. And this fast forward a year later, this is not the same team. Like they're a true family now, and they're looking out for each other, which is awesome.
Yep.
So there you go, kids. Episode 7 is in the books. Headspace. We crushed it. I'm telling you. Hope you enjoyed this episode, kids. Before we get out of here, if we can somehow, if you guys have anything left, check your lifeblood after putting everything you have into this. What's your takeaways from this episode, Jay? What do you got?
Fuck Nathan Shelley.
Great.
As I said at the start of the episode, like throughout the episode, you gradually start to dislike Nate more and more, and by the end, you'll end up despising him. Mm-hmm. And it only gets worse from here. This was for me both times. Like this was kind of like my sort of breaking point with Nate, where I was like, "All right, no, he's gone too far now. He's a piece of shit." He needs bringing down a couple of pegs. I think there's a lot of, as well as obviously what's going on with Nate, and that's kind of like the big thing in the series right now, isn't it? There's a lot of interest in like smaller cogs moving, as we kind of touched on with like the training thing with Roy and Jamie, where they're a bit more like on the same, not on the same page, but a bit more level pegging with one another, a bit more kind of like back and forth. It's good to see Trent back, albeit briefly, because we hadn't seen him for a good couple of episodes, had we?
No, a long time.
Yeah.
I think it might have actually been the first episode we hadn't seen until. But all in all, it definitely felt like kind of the sort of the fallout of the last episode was felt very much in this one, but it still didn't kind of slow down. Yeah,
well said. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, if last episode was the explosion, this is the debris hitting the ground. We've got like Ted in a good place now. He's in therapy. He's sort of dealing with his problems. But then at the opposite end of that spectrum, by the end of this episode, Nate is too far gone to redeem, I think. Like that last bit with it only being Will there, like it feels like a calculated move. Like he was, as soon as he got that shirt, he waited and just waited until he was the last one, and then because he knew he could get away with it, and like that's the work of a sociopath. That's the work of someone who has plotted that out just to get that little bit of power and control over someone. And it's Will. Like, what control is there to have over him? Nothing. But this, I think, is where Nate reaches that tipping point, and he's well over the crevasse into the valley of knobheads.
That's a book. Do they read the book on the show, The Valley of the Knobheads? I like to read that.
I think that's the new Indiana Jones one. Is it Indiana Jones and the Valley of Knobheads?
Yeah, it's the spin-off they did where it wasn't Harrison Ford. It was just Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, boo.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf. Call him by his full name.
Yes.
It's French. It's French for shave the beef.
It is.
It's not.
We would have fell for that. I fell for it the moment you said it. I'm like, oh, is it really? Yeah.
LaBeouf is the beef, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but well, it's the beef, but Shire is just, I don't think it's a name. It's a noise, isn't it? It's a noise you make to get cats to come towards you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end on that, kids. Thanks so much for checking us out. We appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing the show, for downloading, for subscribing, for following us on all the major podcast platforms, for following us on socials. Remember, at Two Nations Pod, if you don't want to do the work, you don't want so many hours in the day, what are we going to do? Give you a list of stuff to go follow? We used to do that. Not anymore. BoinkStudios.com. BOINK, BoinkStudios.com. Every link you could ever hope to find for this show is on that website. The links to these two gentlemen's podcasts is there as well, and to my other two shows on top of that. Everything you want. And remember, none of our content is, and that includes these two guys you see before you, none of our content's behind a paywall. All right? And even if we were in a position to do that, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I don't know about any of the rest of you guys. When I see a podcast that you pay for, I'm out. I'm moving to the next one. I'm not interested. You know what I mean? I do this for the love of it. These guys do too. And hopefully you guys have loved what you've seen and heard so far. Thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate you very much. Stay tuned for episode 8. It's on the way. Until then, for Joe and Jay, I'm Tom. See you next time, kids.